Ready.
All right, we're going to get started. Good evening and welcome to the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission meeting, our regular meeting on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. And please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that flag. It was beautiful. Mrs. Vasquez, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Ferris?
Here.
Commissioner Hayek?
Here.
Commissioner Pletcher?
Here.
Commissioner Imel?
Here.
And Chair Lemmel?
Here. And would you please, Mrs. Vasquez, make the announcement regarding our public comments?
Of course. This is the time and place for public comments. Registration for public comments was available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole, and all documents for the Commission and the official record should be presented to the recording secretary prior to the meeting. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up.
Thank you very much. And just one more thing before we have our speaker begin. I'd like to ask commissioners and any participants and speakers to please silence your cell phones and remind any participants and our commissioners as well that during our meeting, we do not communicate by way of the Zoom chat service with one another. And with that, may we have our first speaker, please?
Yeah, and I should also say, currently we have 5 individuals requesting to speak, and pursuant to the Traffic Commission standards, public comment speakers are allowed 3 minutes. Okay.
Thank you very much. And will there be a timer for them to see on the screen as in the past? All right, so our first speaker on public comments that does not have to do with an agenda item.
Okay, so we have Joel Choman is the first public speaker. Joel, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time is up to speak.
Hello, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Joel Choman. I live in Newbury Park. It was a little difficult to figure out which agenda item to discuss, but I'm calling about the bicycle lanes. I am opposed to the current bicycle lane improvements or ideas for Newbury Park. Amongst the top of that list is the fire department response. Fire Station 32 responds to much of northwestern Newbury Park, and these bicycle lanes will reduce their response corridor down to 1 lane for roughly half of their trip over to Newbury Park, or over to Northwest Newbury Park. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you that people already have a difficulty getting out of the way of fire trucks and ambulances, much less when they only have 1 lane available. Also wanted to point out that the evacuation from southwestern Newbury Park, and specifically Dos Vientos, will be negatively impacted by any type of evacuation that we have to do. There's obviously fires in this area, fires in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I know the city recently got, I believe, an $8 million grant to improve evacuation throughout the city. And I find it really hard to believe that we can improve our evacuation of the Dos Vientos area by reducing all of the streets that exit Dos Vientos down to 1 lane. Dos Vientos traffic uses Reno Road, Orchard Road, Lynn Road, And all three of those roads are being discussed to limit down to 1 lane for bicycle use. That's really all I had. I wanted to just make public my disapproval of this project. And also like to point out that I didn't bother to look for it right now, but on some sites like Nextdoor and Facebook, I previously saw surveys going to the different neighborhoods asking. And if I remember right, I think I saw about 70 to 80% of people
Your
who
comment,
were
you have
opposed.
1 minute remaining.
So I think I saw surveys of 70 to 80% of people who were opposed to these bicycle lane changes. And I guess I'd be a little bit curious to know why the city is still considering this and moving forward when so much of the population seem to be opposed to this. That's all I have. Thank you for my time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Choman. Staff, I would just say that if there's an appropriate response, staff will take care of it following our meeting. Our next speaker, please.
Okay, our next speaker is Mike Fahrencroft. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yes, I'm a resident of Newbury Park. My name is Michael Fahrencroft. I also am against these bike lanes, for obviously the reasons that were stated previously, but as well as just the amount of traffic that we see, throughout the day. I think in the previous meeting, we were told this road was designed for 18,000 vehicles. We currently have roughly 14,000 vehicles. And if we cut it down in half to 1 lane in each direction, that's basically saying 9,000 vehicles, right? So we're already 50% over capacity. And the way it was explained last time, it was for, the possibility of gaining more ridership. So we had asked if there was a traffic study done and a cycling study done. And I'm just wondering if that has yet been done. So if we know how many riders are currently using the Reno Road area. And the busiest times, I think, for me are, going to school. I drive this road multiple times a day, and I find it sometimes very difficult to, make a left out of the Mayfield area onto Reno Road. And when it's down to 1 lane and backed up as much as it would be next to impossible for us to get out of here. So that's about all I have to say about that.
Thank you for your comment.
Right.
Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Karen Martin. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, it's Karen Martin, Thousand Oaks. I'm on the other end of Lynn Road. And I'm really perplexed at what to do. Trying to get some patrol down here. And we've had 3 accidents on Lynn in a very short period of time. One on Jan's, just west of Lynn. People do not respect the speed limit. This is a dangerous intersection, Lynn and Jan's. It has a curve and an elevation, and they just drive through it and end up in the median strip. And a couple weeks ago, we had one northbound where the 2 cars collided and ended up going southbound on the northbound lane and hit a wall, which those are really expensive when you have to pay to repair them, which those are owner walls. We're also having problems finding people, I am assuming young people, and sometimes they get in with wrong people and do wrong things. And in this drought, it was disturbing to me that we were having fireworks going on. And when I called, I was told they were too busy to respond. And I know our response times are supposed to be 5 minutes, but now they're 7.5 minutes. Speaking with some of the people in the police department, I was told I should not vote to disenfranchise the police. And that is the complete opposite of what I'm trying to do. I mentioned the last time I was here that we have fewer patrol officers, and we do. If you look at the 2018 budget, we had 61 patrol service officers. We have 41. And we have so much racing going on down here. We
Ms.
have,
Martin, you have 1 minute remaining.
thank you. We have illegal exhausts. I can register 100 decibel behind my wall, which should take it down 10 decibel. And I've recorded people who have vehicles that are idling. They cannot, and your staff has told me, no, they can't do that. They can't not be over the illegal number. So I would request, instead of 0 in 2021, that you guys get started and maybe start tagging some of these kids and adults and super trucks that are just flying through this neighborhood before somebody gets killed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Speaker is Clint. Clint, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hello, I'm Clint Foltz from the Conejo Climate Coalition, and I live in Thousand Oaks. I wanted to voice our support as the Conejo Climate Coalition for additional bike lanes. The transportation sector accounts for 62% of all greenhouse gas emissions in Thousand Oaks, and new bike lanes would be a great opportunity to reduce pollution by increasing bicycle ridership in our community. Additionally, a study published in the British Medical Journal found that people who commute by bike have a 52% lower risk of death from heart disease, a 46% lower risk of developing heart disease, a 40% lower risk of death from cancer, and a 45% lower risk of developing cancer. So there's plenty of good reasons to increase bicycle ridership in our community. I'd also like to give a quick shout out for protected bike lanes. I understand that they aren't part of the current plan, but I feel like it's obligatory that I throw it out there. Protected bike lanes are great. And on another subject, I'm sorry I didn't have time to do more research on item 6C, but I used to live on Chiquita Lane and would walk down North Oakview Lane to cross Thousand Oaks Boulevard to catch the 161 bus to work. And even with the flashing lights, I was nearly hit at that crossing more times than I care to remember. So if anything can be done to make that crossing safer, I'm all for it. So thank you for your time, and thanks for all that you guys do. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Randall, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, my name is Pat Randall. I live in Newbury Park, and I'm a cyclist, and really do appreciate the time and attention that you're providing to serving a greater portion of the people using transportation in Newbury Park. I had spoken before, and I obviously support this. Reno Road will provide an important corridor, and the way that you have it designed will be additional safety for cyclists. I think one thing that we should consider, that you probably may have been considering, that you can notice, is the increased use of e-bikes or even e-scooters, many the single wheel e-things. And I think you're going to see these being used by the high school. And right now, there really is not a good path to get to Newbury Park High School. This will be a tremendous improvement for them as they continue, as this trend continues to grow. It's exploding right now. So I realize it's difficult for people who have always had the transportation system really discussed in terms of the automobile and their automobile, but I'm glad we're having a broader conversation now of including all types of transportations into the system in Newbury Park. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And our last speaker in public comments, please.
Yes, Trent Sigurd, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trenton Sigurd, and I live in Newbury Park. Excuse me. I want to voice my support for these bike lanes. I live essentially on Lynn and Reno, and so the Reno corridor is a route that I travel often. I use that to go grocery shopping. I use it to get coffee, and it's a corridor down to the Albertsons Shopping Center, as well as the Trader Joe's Shopping Center. Recently, I got a new e-bike, and I have been cutting down on my car use. And let me tell you that commuting by bicycle is just as fast as a car. You can run your errands even faster. And it's a bummer that I feel more safe with an electric bicycle. And that's because I'm able to navigate traffic quicker. And I posted a video on Twitter, if you don't ride a bicycle, what it looks like going up the Reno street with cars passing you very closely. And it is very uncomfortable. And I typically hug the side of the lane where there can be objects and whatnot. So with the use of my e-bike, I am going to be taking the lane, and I will further keep recording myself riding in the bike routes, and so that people can see what cyclists have, the good things and the bad things. So we have a lot of great bike lanes in Thousand Oaks. I don't want to take too much time. I just want to voice my support for the bike lanes, and specifically protected bike lanes. Thank you very much, and have a beautiful night.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers in public comment that may have joined late? Seeing none, then the next item on our agenda, which I believe is just for review, but no need to vote on anything, is our summary notes of our July 21st, 2021 meeting, which is attached. And are there any comments to those summary notes? Hearing none, we will move ahead with item number 6. And before we call on our senior engineer, Mr. Mashiko, to present the first report, I would like to explain the flow of the meeting for the benefit of those watching us tonight and residents who have been registered to speak under this meeting's engineer's reports. Each of the reports will be followed by a discussion between the traffic commissioners and the staff. When our discussion is completed, we will have our speakers, and then staff will share a list of registered speakers on the screen and start calling the speakers one by one. May we request now Senior Engineer Jim Mashiko to present our first report, which is 6A, the speed hump petition for Columbia Road, Moor Park Road to Sidley Street, previously reviewed at our February 19th, 2020 meeting. And this is an action item. Mr. Mashiko.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Lemo. This is a petition request to install speed humps on Columbia Road between Moor Park Road and Sidley Street. On your screen, you should have a PowerPoint slides that are popping up. Here's a location map showing Columbia Road highlighted in orange, just northwest of the intersection of Moor Park Road and Jans Road. The petition zone is approximately half a mile in length. The speed limit on the road is 25 miles an hour. There are 53 homes that take frontage on this road segment. Approximately 1/3 of the road to the west end runs north-south, while the longer portion runs east-west, where it connects to Moor Park Road. This same segment, as Chair Lemo just mentioned, was previously reviewed by the Commission for consideration of speed humps back in February of 2020. At that meeting, the Commission voted 3-1 to not recommend speed humps be installed, as the street segment did not meet the city's speed hump guidelines. Here's some pictures I'll show you of the street. Here's a typical cross-section of Columbia Road looking westbound near its midpoint. The road has good visibility with gentle road curvature. It has a relatively flat grade, and street lights and sidewalks are provided. Towards the west end of the road segment, the road curves to the right and the grade of the street heads down. You can see there is centerline striping at this point. It's been added to guide motorists through the curve and keep them on their half of the roadway. And then after the curve, this is the view at Triangle Street. The road is oriented north-south with as much as a 5% grade before it ends at Sidley Street. To give a little background on this petition, we received the petition in April of this year. 77% of the residents supported installing speed humps on Columbia Road. We collected traffic data shortly thereafter with the petitioners providing input on the placement of the 3 machine counters that we used to collect the data. The traffic data, findings, and recommendation are summarized in the staff report. Prior to the meeting, approximately 230 meeting notices were mailed to the neighborhood so that the residents on both Columbia Road and adjacent cross streets could provide input on this matter to assist the commission develop a recommendation on this petition request. We did provide the commissioners copies of 6 emails we received from the neighborhood this afternoon. And here's a map that shows the 230 homes shown in blue where meeting notices were mailed. The city's speed hump policy is documented by resolution 2009-45. There's 9 criteria that we reviewed. For this presentation, I'll focus on 4 measurable criteria that are based on the petition rate, daily traffic volume, speed, which is the percentage of traffic traveling faster than 25 miles an hour, and the residential street requirement. After review of the traffic data that we collected, we found Columbia Road does not meet all of the city's criteria to qualify for speed humps. Columbia meets the petition and residential street requirements, but does not meet the traffic volume and speed criteria. Here's some additional data that are not part of the speed hump criteria, but we thought we'd share with you regarding speed and collisions. The speed, depending on which road segment that you're on, ranges anywhere from 25 to 34 miles an hour. And collision data that we collected over a 6.5-year period for the road, there was 5 reported, with only 1 being related to speed as a primary factor. So you may ask yourself, what changed with this recent speed hump evaluation of Columbia compared to the speed hump evaluation reviewed in February of 2020. The data shows that the petition rate decreased slightly from 85% support to 77%. But the traffic volume and speed experienced slight decreases as well. There was 1 new collision that was reported since the last review, and that was not speed related. The staff report identifies 6 potential actions to consider in response to the petition, ranging from the installation of speed cushions to less restrictive actions, such as the 2 highlighted in yellow here, which are options 1 and 2, which is speed limit enforcement and temporary use of a mobile radar feedback sign, which are staff's recommended actions since the city's speed hump guidelines are not fully met. Now, the city's adopted practice is to install speed cushions rather than speed humps to eliminate emergency response concerns. And this picture shows that a speed cushion is more user-friendly for emergency vehicles due to the strategically placed open slots. A 3-inch high speed cushion reduces most speeds down to 25 miles an hour. And one of the primary benefits of speed cushions is that they minimize traffic diversion to other neighborhood routes compared to speed humps. And if speed cushions are ultimately approved for installation along Columbia, here's a schematic diagram showing the layout of 7 speed cushions spaced at uniform intervals about 300 to 400 feet apart. The spacing encourages drivers to maintain a steady pace rather than speeding up and slowing down if spaced further apart. And with speed cushions, we would not expect a significant volume of traffic to divert to other streets. However, if there is some traffic diversion, the streets shown in green serve as alternate routes in the neighborhood. These streets include Burleson Avenue, Sidley Street, Kevin Street, and Triangle Street. So with that, the staff recommendation is in the staff report. This concludes this presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. Just one question jumps to mind. When we look at all of the different warrants or guidelines, if I'm reading things properly, the only one that is actually met is the 77% petition rate. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Well, it also meant that this residential street requirement.
Yes.
This road is a legal, residential street. We only allow speed humps on residential streets.
Right. Thank you very much. And we'll open it up to commissioners for questions. If you would raise your hand, and I'll do my best to have any commissioner questions happen in the order in which you raise your hand. Do we have any commissioner questions on this issue? Yes, Commissioner Pletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Machiko. I just had two questions, just very, very general. I just wanted to, I missed it maybe in the staff report or maybe it just went over my head. When we did the, I just want to get a date or date range when the traffic speed and volume measurements on Columbia Road were done.
I think it was May of 2000. The most recent one would have been May of 2021. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the recent one, I believe it was June. Just we received the petition in April, and then the data was collected, I believe, in June.
Oh, okay. So we just did it. We did a fresh count. There was a public comment in one of the emails in our supplemental packet raised that question, and I just wanted to clarify that. And can you confirm with me? Again, it's kind of along the line of the chair's question. We seem to be really guided here by the 2009 resolution passed by council as to what we can and cannot consider and what qualifies for speed hump installation. Is that correct?
Yeah, in general, at least for staff, we're required to follow, what the written guidelines are in terms of meeting all the points that are listed in that resolution. If it, meets all, say it meets 8 of the 9, but it doesn't meet that 9th one, staff would not recommend installing the speed humps.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we, Vice Chair Email?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was looking at resolution 2009-045, which is attachment number 3. And it was in under section A, paragraph 8, which discusses emergency vehicle response. I think for the first time, there's a reference there to speed lumps, I guess to be distinguished from speed humps. And so I was wondering what is the distinction between speed lumps and speed humps? And secondly, we're talking alternatively in this particular item about speed cushions. And so did speed cushion technology exist in 2009 such that when we're referencing speed humps and speed lumps in this resolution, did it contemplate speed cushions?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm looking at that resolution right now. And back then, because this resolution was 2009, there was different nomenclature terminology used for speed lumps, which are speed cushions. They're the same thing, but over time, the verbiage more or less, the traffic engineering profession is following speed cushions now rather than speed lumps. So that item number 8 in the resolution, it does say that consider the use of speed lumps in lieu of speed humps. If there's a increase in response time, well, that means speed cushions, which is what we're using today.
So is it staff? Thank you for the answer. is it staff's understanding that this resolution providing the guidelines for the installation of speed bumps also applies to speed cushions?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, we are, I guess, since 2009, there were a couple of speed humps that were approved for various streets. The issue of response time became somewhat of an issue. So on some of those handful of installations that were approved, our practice became the use of the speed cushions in order to minimize the concerns over response time and also to minimize traffic diverting to other adjacent parallel streets that usually occurs with speed humps.
Okay, so the construction of this resolution has been that speed humps, the restrictions on the installation of speed humps that also applies to speed cushions.
Yes, that's correct.
I think it's more just the solution to the problem as opposed to identifying the problem. The problem's identified for either of those two solutions, but if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me right, speed cushions came in just to answer the concern that speed bumps didn't address the delays or the expected delays caused for public safety. Am I correct on that? Anybody on staff?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. Because there was, I think Green Meadow Avenue is a good example.
It is correct.
If you recall that location, that street is somewhat like Columbia, where it feeds a large number of other interior streets. And there was a large discussion about response time to getting to the other streets. And during the approval process, I believe our city council asked us to look at alternative ways of trying to mitigate that. And then it turned out that the speed cushions was sort of the middle ground to eliminate the issue with response time, but also reduce speed on that street.
Anything else, Commissioner Vice Chair Eno?
Yeah, thank you. There was also a reference, I think, in one of the emails that we received in connection with this item that was pointing out that I think it's St. Paschal Babylon has a northern exit or a driveway there that is adjacent to Columbia. And I was wondering if it would be possible to put back up the map of the neighborhood that we're looking at now and just indicate where that driveway is.
Yeah, I'll just use this map here. It's about 3 houses to the west of the intersection of Moor Park at Columbia. You'll see on this map there's 3 lots, and then there's a skinny lot just opposite Burleson Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that? That's where there's a driveway egress coming out of the church, and there's a gate there. It's closed most of the day except during arrival and dismissal times. And then as soon as the school traffic clears, that gate is closed.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions from other commissioners? Yes, sir, Commissioner Ferris.
Thank you. Actually, I think Vice Chair Email brought up some very interesting items here, and I think because of the language, I guess my question would be what actually was the technology that people thought about when it was speed lump? Is it just like a shallower speed hump so that it's or is it truly these sort of like you give these lanes for high profile things so that they could get over it? And I guess that's I see the chair is nodding, but is that what the contemplation was?
Okay, let me just show you the image again. It's probably on this image it shows basically this is a speed cushion or speed lump. Both are the same thing.
And that's the tires, correct? That's the tire.
Yeah, if
area,
you
which is-
see where the
is that
cutouts,
gray?
when a fire truck passes through, they would pass through those open slots. They would not be impacted by the pavement portion that rises up and back down again.
And the premise is they have a wider
Yeah.
base for the
Wider
wheels,
than a
and so
standard.
their wheels fit and have a high enough profile to where they kind of scoot over this lump, where other standard vehicles would not. Is that the case?
Yeah, usually a standard vehicle, they're going to at least have. Usually, most people will probably drive like one set of tires, whether it's a left side or right side, through the open slot, but the other side of the vehicle is going to be rising up and over the hump portion.
And for that reason, that's one of the rationales of why you said the introduction of these speed cushions would not lead to diversion of traffic to other non-speed humped areas, because this would allow people to be able to traverse this without significant slowing just to get over the hump and not ruin their transmission.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, they're not as jarring as the speed bumps.
Right. So I guess that gets, and I guess I have similar questions. They've been answered. Maybe just to get confirming here is that the contemplation was that the resolution 2009-045 contemplated both the introduction of speed humps and these speed lump speed cushions as what they were contemplating to have to meet the criteria in order for them to be placed. Is that, and I understand it for speed humps, is that in fact the case, or is that how we're interpreting it in this case?
If I may, Commissioner, this is Mohammed Fatini, Division Manager. I believe that the resolution was passed for any restriction in the street. It's not the type that we're discussing into that. It's creating restrictions, slowing down the speed limitations that we create, any obstacles that we create to limit the speed. That's the point that this is making. Now, the tools is being used are the options. And those options were specified in it. One of them was a speed lump that in the future was improved to speed cushion. I hope.
Okay, so then is as one of the options that we have in front of us, which is the introduction of the speed cushion, is it staff's interpretation that would not be a viable option under the resolution because it does not meet the criterion?
Yeah, the resolution goes back onto reduction of speed in the street and creating obstructions to reduce the speed, not what causes what we use to do that. It's not the tool, it's the object of doing that.
Yeah, in other words, the resolution was intended to cover the placement of these types of traffic control devices on a street, where they should or should not be placed. And not so much which exact type of device needs to be used.
It just basically gives us the options of different kinds of restrictions we use to reduce the speed. The whole point was not to slow down the traffic, let the traffic flow properly. If it meets the requirements, then we can go back to get the voting of 77% or 75%, and then we do install those restrictions. It's not the type of restriction in question here. The in question is, does it need to have a restriction of any kind?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The resolution covers the speed humps and the speed cushions, kind of either or, depending on the application that's required for that instance.
Okay, I'll take that and think about it as we go through the case.
I think it just basically gives the engineering department discretion to use either speed humps or speed cushions, depending on the situation. if emergency response is going to be impacted, it gives the engineering department flexibility to use the speed cushions, you know, if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferris. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Hearing none, then we will move ahead, Mrs. Vasquez, with our, if we have any comments, may we have, how many speakers do we have? And may we have our first speaker?
Sure. We currently have 4 individuals that have requested to speak on this item. Again, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. And for the record, there are 6 emails we have received to date regarding the speed hump petition for Columbia Road. The PDF contains comments from 2 supporting speed humps, 3 opposed to speed humps, and 1 in support of speed hump cushions only within a designated zone. I'll go ahead and call it.
Thank you. May we have our first speaker, please?
Okay, Clay Blankney. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time is up to speak.
Okay, thank you. Clay Blatney, Thousand Oaks. So the petition rate actually went up to 83% this year. We got more signatures after we sent in the first round. It was 44 out of the 53 houses signed in favor of the petition. The first point I want to look at, there's 10 things that would relax the daily threshold to 1,500 cars. I want to go over 4 of those points that I feel like the commission may want to take a look at, or probably should take a look at. I want to thank Jim Machiko as well with all of his help as far as getting this data. According to how many trips a day a household's supposed to take, it's around 10. So 53 times 10 would give you 530 trips a day that should be going up and down the street if you go with that rule of thumb. One location hit 1,980 vehicles in a 24-hour period. That's by the St. Pascal School and Burleson Avenue. So if you took those 530 cars out and did the math, that's 73% extra cars that are traveling in that area on a daily basis in a 24-hour period. And the midpoint, the number was 880. So if you take 530 away from that, do your math, that's 40% of the people. So I think the city should consider this a cut-through street. And also there was no actual cut-through survey done. To do that, you would have to do a license plate survey, and that was not completed. So I think the city should consider this street being a cut-through, and that would be one of the criteria that would meet that threshold to release the numbers by 500 vehicles. The second part was that St. Pascal School is exiting 1,000 cars a day on that area across from Burleson Street, but yet the school is not considered adjacent to Columbia Road. That just baffles me that another 1,000 cars will be put on the road in that area, but we can't say the school is on our road. Last year in the commission, one thing that one of the commission members said was, I wish there was a school on your street. Number 3 would be that curve that we talked about leading.
Blackney, you have 1 minute remaining.
The curve leading down towards north towards Triangle Street is not considered a winding curving street. That picture doesn't do it justice. You go down around the corner, you can't see around the corner. Then it leads into a 2-way stop. There's so many accidents that almost happen there. And Triangle is actually the cut through that people get get back on Jans and eventually down to Lynn Road. They don't go to Sidley. It was almost like a 400 car jump from the midpoint to after Triangle. So the people are cutting through at Triangle. Last point is the speed sensor put at 230 accounted for 480 cars that are either traveling 0 to 15 miles an hour into that average speed of 32 miles an hour. Those should be thrown out because those are people driving the driveway. If I'm driving 10 miles out to drive my driveway, another person drives by going 40. Now we're both doing 50. Divide that by 2. We're not both doing 25 miles an hour. So I think the way that they measure the speed is not a good way to do it. It's not an accurate portrayal of what the actual speeds are in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Yeah, Ingo Brower. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yes, good evening. I'm Ingo Brower. I live in San Jose, California, but I own a house on Columbia Road. I have seen 3 collisions very close to the house, which is 252 Columbia Road. I was given the opportunity to speak, which I appreciate. I am in disagreement with Mr. Mashiko, who did a fairly thorough job, but he didn't do a complete job regarding speeds and the collision factors. He states that only one accident out of 5 was related to speed. What I saw were 3 accidents, and that was all in the same year. I believe it was 2017 or 2018. There were people who were driving very fast. They smashed into a trash can, smashed into a car, and the other one was smashing into a mailbox, tearing off the mailbox, which is between the sidewalk and the street. I would like the idea of the speed cushions. I think that makes sense, although I am concerned that people's speed would not really be slowed down. I do believe that Columbia Road is a diversion street to cut back time to get from Moor Park Road to Jantz Avenue. I would like to see at least the cushions put in. I'm curious if anyone on the commission knows about the existence of other speed bumps in Thousand Oaks. We've lived in Thousand Oaks for many years. I'm not aware of a single street in Thousand Oaks that has speed bumps. I understand there's some opposition. I can understand the opposition, but regardless of how many cars drive down the road, all it takes is one vehicle to hit a pedestrian. And then we have a loss of life and we have possible lawsuits. I would like to avoid that by having speed bumps installed. The 5 speed bumps I think would be sufficient. I do favor speed bumps, although I can understand that there's a concern for emergency vehicles. And for that reason, if the commission would recommend the speed cushions, I could live with that. I think the idea of the church.
Mr. Brewer, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. The fact that St. Pascal's Catholic Church is along Columbia, not directly on the side of the road, but it causes more traffic on Columbia. More traffic causes more risk of collisions. I have seen cars go on Columbia Road between 50 and 60 miles an hour. And the only way to slow that traffic down is by speed cushions or speed bumps. I live in San Jose. Here in the affluent area where there's a lot of children on sidewalks, we have speed bumps all over the place. In Willow Glen, almost every street has speed bumps. Thousand Oaks, as far as I know, doesn't have a single road with speed bumps. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Martin Hickey. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
My name is Martin Hickey. I live on Columbia Road in Thousand Oaks, and thank you for the opportunity to address the commission. I live exactly in the area indicated on Mr. Mashiko's map, considered for these speed cushions. And our street is the last turnoff for southbound traffic before reaching the intersection of Jans and Moor Park, which I believe is probably one of the busiest intersections in the Conejo Valley. Drivers heading southbound on Moor Park who wish to access the 101 freeway can evade that intersection. They can evade that traffic light by turning down our street and then turning, as Clay mentioned, on Triangle Street to access Jans and then Lynn Road and eventually the freeway. I appreciate the effort in the past to post the speed limit radar signs and to increase the patrol presence, but it's inadequate. That's not enough. We need a more physical barrier to these speeders. As Clay mentioned, two cars, someone pulling out of their driveway at 5 miles an hour and somebody else speeding down the road at 50 miles an hour. Yeah, they may average 25 miles an hour, but that's really not a realistic illustration of what's going on. Currently, the speed of the traffic is dangerous. There's a lot of children, there's elderly, and when I pull out of my driveway, it's dangerous. So I hope the commission will take those other considerations into account, as well as the criteria that has been talked about already. Thank you for the chance to talk to the commission.
Thank you very much. And I believe we have 3 more speakers on this item. No, 2 more speakers on this item.
Okay, next speaker is Michelle Landauer. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, Michelle Landauer, Thousand Oaks. I think most of it's been covered, but as a resident here directly on the street, it's appalling, actually, the drivers that come speeding down here daily, and it's definitely a cut-through street. I understand the school exits out onto our street, and they choose to come all the way west down Columbia versus going the opposite direction to avoid the intersection. I witness weekly honking horns from people at the corner of Triangle and Columbia with near misses constantly. We've had an elderly person who was hurt badly trying to save a child who had gone out into the street from a car that was racing down the street. New person moving in, their cars were parked on the curb. They were hit by people going extremely fast. It's ridiculous. Just living here and being in my yard daily and watching what I watch. And I think if any one of you were living here and saw that, you would definitely be petitioning for this. It's just too dangerous. We have many children on this street and many elderly, and an elderly woman fell. It's a blind corner as you're rounding the westward bound coming down to Triangle. She was trying to cross the street and fell in the middle of the street, and I rushed to get her because I knew she'd be hit by a car. I've been almost hit numerous times trying to pull in or out of my driveway because people come racing through here. It's ridiculous. That's really all I can say. I think most of the points have been touched upon. But unless you're
Landauer,
here
you
to
have
see
1
it,
minute remaining.
you would not really understand. But it's too dangerous. People, the way that life is today, everyone's in a hurry and they're not paying attention. And if you're coming up that street, heading east in the morning, which many people do to cut through to get to work and school, the sun's in their eyes and they can't see anything. There are near misses every week, almost daily. So I fully agree that they need to be put in.
Thank you very much for your comments. We have one more speaker on this item as far as the chart shows. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mrs. Vasquez?
Yes, we have John Maynard next. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yeah, hi, this is John Maynard from Thousand Oaks. I live on Columbia. Thank you all for your time. I wanted to reiterate and agree with the previous comments. I've lived on Columbia for about 25 years and can attest that the traffic has become worse over the years. When I'm in the front yard, I almost always see people clearly going above the speed limit, some far above the limit. I would suggest that during the pandemic, the traffic has been less than before. I was kind of surprised that we were doing the measurement at that time. And during the collection time, I also watched as people would literally slow down before the measurement tubes or drive around them, which would clearly impact the measurement for those going above the speed limit. In addition, as mentioned previously, people that live in the neighborhoods would skew the results. You know, if I'm going 5 miles an hour, as Clay mentioned previously. People pick up a lot of speed coming up the hill, and you have the blind corner with a lot of parked cars, so it's just dangerous to back up out of the driveway. We have 3 schools within just a couple of blocks. It's clearly a pass through with people wanting to avoid jams. I also like the idea of the cushions. And since the last meeting, I'm not aware of any steps that were taken to address the problem. I haven't seen any police enforcement or anything like that. So I strongly encourage the resolution, and I look forward to see what you do.
Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Vasquez, have we gained any other speakers?
No, no more speakers.
All righty, thank you very much. With that, then, we will move on And before we go on to our commissioner comments, can staff respond to any of the speakers' comments? One in particular I heard, which I'd like to have your official response. I heard that there are, quote unquote, no streets in the city of Thousand Oaks with speed humps. And I do remember approving them over the last 12 years. So if you could just verify that my memory isn't failing me, and then take it from there if you have any other response to our speakers' comments.
Yes, Chair Lemo, I could start with that question, that there are no speed humps in Thousand Oaks. I mean, we do have 26 streets in Thousand Oaks that do have speed humps. The installation program started in the early 1980s. I think we had some like 1982, and then adopted a formal policy in 1983. And we followed that policy for a number of years and finally revised it in 2009, which is the current policy. In that policy, we introduced the idea of the speed cushions, or in the resolution, it's referred to as speed lumps. Because what happened is, from 83 to 2009, we pretty much covered all the streets that met the requirements. The daily traffic volume requirement was 2,500 vehicles per day. And we hit a period where no streets were meeting the requirement anymore. And so after that, we relaxed the volume requirement from 2,500 vehicles per day down to 2,000. And so we're following that requirement at this point. But yes, there are 26 streets in Thousand Oaks that do have either speed humps or speed cushions. I don't think there's many in this area near Columbia. So maybe the gentleman that lives out of town, he doesn't see them when he comes visits, is because they're not near his neighborhood. You're going to find them, in Newbury Park area. You're also going to find them in central Thousand Oaks. But yes, we have 26 streets. The other thing to consider about Columbia Road is that there's a comment made that there should only be about 530 vehicles per day on that street. One thing you have to remember about Columbia is that it is a residential collector street. It is connected to Moor Park Road, which is a major street. So, it's somewhat of a residential collector street. So it feeds and funnels additional streets in the neighborhood. The map I showed earlier, it has a direct connection to Triangle Street, Burleson, was the other street, Kevin Street. But that type of street, it's going to have more vehicles than, say, for example, Triangle. That street probably only has, most of the traffic on that street is going to be people who live on that street, versus the way Columbia is set up, is that Columbia feeds and funnels all the other interior streets in that neighborhood. There was also a comment about St. Pascal's that contributes 1,000 vehicles per day to Columbia. Well, our data doesn't show that the volume is that high. I mean, if it did feed 1,000 vehicles onto Columbia, the numbers would have reflected it. But that back driveway that feeds off of Columbia, that's near Moor Park Road, at least the times I've been there, that gate is closed throughout the day and only open during the morning and then the afternoon dismissal periods of that school. It appears that most of the vehicles coming out of that driveway, they exit, make a right turn, and head back to Moor Park Road, rather than hanging a left and then going down Columbia Road and circulating through the neighborhood. Okay, there was also a question that some of where the speed counters were placed, some of the data should be thrown out because the speeds were too slow. I mean, we consider all speeds, whatever our machines record, we feel that's representative of the entire street. If someone is coming out of their driveway or entering their driveway, they're going to have to slow down. So, we want to make sure the data represents those types of activities, because that's a typical type of action you're going to see on a residential street. We're not just going to, leave the data that we feel is the highest. We're going to present everything Our data is transparent. We don't, manipulate the data after we see it. We present it, how we received it. A comment was also made about how the road tubes, the rubber tubes that we use to collect the data, that skews the data, causes people to slow down. We don't see it that way. We maybe, for example, the first time someone drives down the street, they may be noticing it, but our machines are out there 24/7. I believe we had it out there for about 2 weeks. So the data was pretty consistent the entire time. If those hoses were effective in slowing speeds down, I think we would have a program other than speed humps. We probably would be installing rubber hoses throughout the city to slow down traffic. But I don't think that that's going to cause people to slow down significantly.
Thank you. Were there any other questions that you wanted to answer?
Additional clarification also, there was a comment about why were the speed measurements taken at this point in time, and that was because of at the request of the neighborhood asking the city to take new measurements, which is the ones that took place this spring.
Okay. Oh, and I do have one final comment about shortcut traffic. It was, felt that this street is a heavily used shortcut route. It would probably be, I would suspect, going from Moor Park Road to Lynn Road. The only way we could measure, what true shortcutting is we would have to have people positioned at both ends of the street, record license plate numbers, and then match them up and see, at point A, did they come in off Moor Park Road and make their way to Lynn Road, and then vice versa. That's, takes quite a bit of manpower to do that. And that's, not part of the speed hump policy or guidelines. So therefore, we did not measure shortcut traffic for this evaluation.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will see if any commissioners have additional questions of staff. Commissioner Ferris.
Thanks. My hand actually is disappearing in the Zoom background here. So
I see that little hand up there. Very nice.
Well, okay, there I got it. But my other hand is sort of like when I wave it, it goes away. With the civic
now Commissioner Fletcher put one up there too. So
so a couple quick questions just to follow up. So I'm looking at the staff report and the number of traffic where the traffic data collection devices were set. 2 of them were kind of clear in that they were in places to where general flow of the traffic on Columbia was set, west of Burleson and north of Triangle. Significant number, while not 75%, a significant number was over the speed limit. But the third one I'm looking at is the one between Moor Park and Burleson. Is that one that is effectively like within a lot of the intersection of Moor Park Road?
Well, that's the one that's between the school driveway and Moor Park Road. So there's only 3 homes there. And so, when someone's coming off of Moor Park Road, they'll come in there, they're counted, and that's includes all the vehicles that are up Burleson that maybe also make their way to Sydley and Triangle and the other internal street.
And thank you for that. I think that the reason I'm asking for that is that there's a lot of traffic that comes in because of the feeders and things coming off Moor Park. They're making turns, so they're probably lower in speed. Also, any cars going eastbound into Moor Park would likely potentially slow at a stoplight if that were what's there at Moor Park. So given that, what's the likelihood that over 75% of the traffic with that location would ever meet the criteria for a speed bump, just based upon where that traffic data collector was located.
Yeah, on that point, on the table, I believe it's on page 3 of the staff report.
Yeah.
Okay, the prevailing speed in that segment was 25 miles an hour. That's, spot on right with what the speed limit is for the road. And 15% was measured above 25 miles an hour.
I guess my question is, given the nature of how traffic enters that particular area for where the traffic is located, either turning off of Moor Park, heading into a controlled intersection at Moor Park Road, what's the likelihood that we're going to get 75% of the traffic to actually be higher than the speed limit? I would expect it to be much lower. And so if we're using the data that we collected to indicate that it was much lower, are we sort of not necessarily being fair with whatever the criteria is for what the speed cushions or whatever there might be would be designed to mitigate?
Well, okay, yeah, the likelihood of that location meeting the speed criteria is very low because the segment is very short. You're either, yeah, like you mentioned, if you're going eastbound, you're coming to a stop, or if you're going westbound, you just enter the street, so you're not gaining speed. That location we did not study the first time back in the February 2020 evaluation. For this one, the petitioners requested that we set up a machine there, so we followed their request and presented the data in the report.
Okay. And so we might get a number of traffic trips that kind of come through there because of the confluence of a number of different feeders into that particular segment of the road. So that makes sense. So my second question then is just given the resolution, what staff is sort of required to provide to the Traffic Commission. There's criteria that's there. These are set by City Council resolution. And so that's what you're basing that data to be collected off of that to provide the recommendation to the Traffic Commission. That's really the role that staff is playing. It's up to us to determine what to do with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
I would like to go just a little further on that, Commissioner Ferris, for 1 second.
Sure.
And ask either staff or our city attorney representative, Mr. Womack, to weigh in. I have been, as you have as well, because of the various commissions that you've sat on, been trained under the understanding that City Council makes laws and resolutions, same as a law in this case, or a guideline, and that we have the right to follow it, but we can at best, if we want to go outside of the resolution, we cannot make a decision to do that. We can make a recommendation for council to revisit the resolution in regards to this particular case. At least that's what I've understood in my history with the commission. Is my understanding, staff or Attorney Womack, is that accurate?
Yes, in essence, you have an obligation to follow it. However, you can make a recommendation that council consider some other course outside of the warrants.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure of that because I want to be certain that we're staying within the realm of where we need to be on this item. And so I didn't want to interrupt any other questions you might have, Commissioner Ferris.
And actually, thank you. And I guess maybe I can follow up on your follow-up questions from me. So I guess from staff's and the city attorney's position on this is that are we, because they did not meet the objective criteria of the resolution, are we as the Traffic Commission compelled to deny the request before us?
The answer to that
with an understanding, I actually agree with the chair's position and about we can make a recommendation to City Council to revise the resolution and update it. But in this particular case, are we compelled to deny the request if it does not meet the specified criteria as presented by staff?
Let me put it this way. You have no authority to unilaterally override the staff's recommendation. What you can do is request that City Council consider your alternative recommendation, which would be installation of the speed cushions through however you want to lay that out, then have City Council consider that.
And in that scenario, there would need to be some factors or criteria that would be outlined to indicate why this location has unique features that would compel that type of a decision.
Yeah, and if I can expand on that, on page 5 of the staff report, there's listing of 10 examples in the city where we've approved or the council has approved speed humps where the criteria was not met. So we threw that in there in the report so that you're aware that those are examples where the criteria was not fully met yet approved by council, and there were special circumstances cited that the resolution does not take into consideration. For example, some of these, or one location had an equestrian zone, or there were no sidewalks, no street lights, things like that. Something somewhat unusual about the street that you can cite and feel it justifies overlooking the requirements.
That one follow-up question for that. What does that look like what is the traffic commission's decision in that particular case? I mean, we're in a position, I think, or the action is to accept or deny, or is this a recommendation to the city council for them to accept or deny?
We're not given the choice. Just to go back to the page 1 or page 2, we're not given the choice to accept or deny. We're given the choice to accept, deny, or follow staff's recommendation, which staff's recommendation does in fact have some, I don't know if proactive is the right word, but I'm going to use that word for right now, proactive steps that could A, garner more information, B, have the result of slowing down traffic without putting in speed humps. As we know, it may be somewhat temporary, but when there's an officer out there, it does cause slowing down. We do know, and we have learned over time, and I'm not going to give the percentage, but there is a significantly high percentage, better than 60% of speeders in any neighborhood live in that neighborhood. So we should keep that in mind. And one of the main reasons for the warrants being set where they are is so that people use the warrants to weigh in. I have lived on a street where I don't ever remember the traffic being near the speed limit, but most of the people that were going over the speed limit wouldn't agree to a warrant anyway. So, I think you kind of have to weigh those things, and that's why I think staff has given us some choices or recommendations that supplant either accepting or denying.
Yep, I appreciate the discussion. I'd love to hear the rest of the comments commissioners have to staff.
Okay, Commissioner Pletcher. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do appreciate my fellow commissioners' questions and considered comments. I share along a lot of those concerns. My one question, I look at page 5 and going on to page 6 of the times in which we've installed cushions or speed humps outside of the traditional warrant considerations. And I thank you, staff, for being so thorough as to listing what were those considerations that went into the installation. And my one question comes back to Clay. Let me see. One of our speakers, I believe it was Clay, mentioned the cut through and the shortcut. We've discussed it very briefly. And I think, Mr. Mashiko, you mentioned shortcutting from Moor Park through Lynn. I believe it's Moor Park through Lynn is what you gave the reference to. would there be any consideration for shortcutting? I think Clay mentioned it, of shortcutting from Moor Park to Jan's so you can skip that intersection. I mean, would that also fall under the definition of what is shortcutting?
Yeah, yes. Well, basically shortcutting, the definition we follow is using a residential street to bypass two arterial streets. So, you know, any trip that starts from Moor Park Road, goes into Columbia, and then ultimately, for example, they get back out to Jan's. Yes, that is a shortcut trip.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, from my understanding, there wasn't a specific definition or a yardage requirement or something I was missing there. You know, I would love to know, I guess, coming back to the resolution then, number 2 in section A2, traffic volume. It mentions the city engineer and, you know, basically reduces the 2,000 threshold down to 1,500 if 2 of the conditions are met by this, you know, as determined by the city engineer. And it mentions shortcutting. I guess where would some of our public speakers go to get some of this key information to determine, or where would we go as commissioners to get some of this key information to determine whether an exception may exist out there where we could make a recommendation that, you know, kind of falls along the table provided on pages 5 and 6. I mean, we don't know shortcutting, for instance, but I see shortcutting as being a consideration on a number of these tables. I mean, we have an idea at least of traffic from St. Pascal's. To me, I just wish there's maybe more information. I think I'm just throwing that out there for discussion. I wish there's a little bit more information specifically on the shortcutting. I can kind of see how shortcutting could be a factor here. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. I really was kind of, I can see it, I guess. And I think 3 of our speakers mentioned shortcutting or cut throughs, as they called it. So I'll just throw it out to my commissioners for further question, comment, discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before moving on, staff, I'm very confused on the discussion about shortcutting, and I'll tell you why. When we're measuring traffic in an area, the measurements that I'm familiar with do not judge directly where the car that's going over that tube is coming from. They just judge that it's coming over the tube. So whether you're in the neighborhood, whether you're shortcutting or whatever, the car count would be the great equalizer, would it not? Or am I misunderstanding something? And by all means, please straighten me out.
Yeah, I think your thought process is correct. Normally, we do look at that daily traffic volume count as sort of like the key indicator. You know, if it's very high, then we would probably suspect shortcutting. A residential street is generally designed for up to 2,500 vehicles per day, and so, you know, if the volumes that we're collecting are, say, 2,000 or more, then maybe we would suspect, you know, there's a potential for shortcutting in the neighborhood. For example, Montgomery Road, that's the street between Jan's and Flores. There's the adult school that cuts through that neighborhood. I believe that volume was over 3,500 vehicles per day. So when that area was evaluated, you know, there's 3,500, that's quite a bit of trips. And that's, you know, for that type of neighborhood, it seems a little bit high. And that's, you know, would be an example of where, you know, we would get suspicious when we see volumes of that magnitude. You know, we would suspect there is probably some kind of shortcutting activity. But, you know, I think every residential street has some level of shortcut. This requirement here in the resolution says 35% of the total volume. So if they're shortcutting, you know, it would show itself throughout the day, 24 hours a day. When we do our measurements, because of the manpower required, we usually just go out during the peak hours because those are the busiest times. You know, after that, for example, this street, you know, traffic is rather light. You know, I think every street's going to have those morning and afternoon peaks because of school or people going to work or people coming home. This street, it seems fairly comparable to most other residential streets in the city. I mean, it is a collector residential street. The speeds that we collected up to 34 mile per hour. That's pretty typical of what we find on all our streets where we get a request for speed humps. So I mean, we didn't see anything unusually high or low on this street. It looks fairly typical of most residential streets.
Thank you. Other commissioners, any questions?
And I guess to add a little bit more to that response to, the commissioner was asking where that data would be, located or summarized. And if there were circumstances like no sidewalks in the community and no street lights or these type of factors, we would have provided that in the report. We would have included those items. But not having those unusual circumstances, they weren't included.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from commissioners? Okay, then we will go to commissioner discussion. We can start our discussion with a motion and discuss a motion. Or we can have some discussion if no one wants to come forward with a motion. Let's start with, do we have any motion that a commissioner would like to make in regards to item 6A? All right, to get things started, I'll throw a motion out there. And that motion would be to accept staff's recommendation based upon the majority of warrants not accomplished. I do believe that their recommendation, and I'm just looking for their specific words right now, so I sort of sped rather quickly through my iPad. Here we go. To follow staff's recommendation, which is the most viable solution is to request additional police enforcement of the speed, particularly during morning and evening commute hours and peak school periods, use of the portable radar feedback sign, and use that to supplement the enforcement activities. And the reason for that motion, or my motion to accept that staff's recommendation, is just following the basics, that there are not sufficient warrants based upon vehicle per day traffic, based upon prevailing speed, and the fact that there has been a drop in the second gathering of names on the petition. So let's just use that motion to start our discussion and open it up for commission discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Vice Chair Email.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, with respect to the question of have we met the required warrants, I mean, I'll just be honest and tell you, here's the problem that I'm having. A strict construction of this resolution that we're looking at is that it presents guidelines for installation of speed humps. And it clearly does not talk about speed humps and speed lumps as being the same device. In fact, it refers to speed lumps as alternatives to speed bumps. So, I mean, from where I'm coming from and my reading of this resolution is that the resolution doesn't apply to the installation of speed lumps. If it did, it would say that. And so where I'm having a big hang up is with just the interpretation of this resolution and its application to the problem that we're discussing right now. And, you know, even if I got past that problem, I do see elsewhere, and the comments have been made repeatedly tonight about, you know, other considerations that should be taken into account, specifically in section 2 of the resolution when we're talking about traffic volume. I mean, are there winding blind curves along the street? Well, we know there's one, and it's just south of Triangle. and it starts a descent down to Sidley. This other issue about it being adjacent to a school. I mean, I know the school is not sitting directly on Columbia, but you've got a driveway right there. And I'm sure you have children present. So I'm not sure if that's just semantics or if that's, something that should just be disregarded. I'm listening to the testimony from the people who live on this street, and I don't think they're, conjuring up stories about what they're experiencing. I think it's a real problem. And so, I mean, my inclination is, and my recommendation is that some sort of speed cushion be installed on the street to mitigate what I'm hearing and what I'm, perceiving to be a speed problem on the street. And that's where I'm having some real difficulty here.
And let me see if I can get some help for that. If I could get Mr. Womack to answer two questions for me, or for us. Number one, this is the first time I've ever heard of an exclusion that the resolution is not written properly and it only includes speed humps rather than speed cushions or speed lumps or speed bumps. We've had over the years speed humps, speed lumps, speed cushions that I'm aware of. Okay, all are, it was my understanding up until your question tonight that those were all considered the same type of solution for the problem. The reason that we came up with speed cushions, speed lumps, they're synonymous from what I understand, is strictly for the convenience and at the suggestion of public safety. There is no other reason. There is no difference between those two. I don't know that anybody would recommend speed cushion, the old-fashioned speed hump, any longer. That's question number one for Mr. Womack. Question number two for Mr. Womack is, so I want to know about the laws. Question number two for Mr. Womack is, we can only make because it doesn't follow the current ordinance, we can only make a recommendation to kick this over to council. That's what I understood him to say when answering Commissioner Fletcher's question. Now I'm looking at the screen. Oh, there you are, Mr. Womack. I see you now. So if you could answer those two questions. First of all, is the ordinance in essence not applicable here because it doesn't specifically call out the replacement for or the alternative to a speed bump? And then secondly, we cannot make a decision on whether or not to put in speed humps. We could only say to council, warrants weren't met. However, we'd like you to consider this. Are those two correct?
Well, certainly the second question ties into the first, in that staff is given a great deal of deference in their interpretation of the city code. And in this case, that is their interpretation that you've heard from several members of staff tonight, that whether it's a speed hump, a speed lump, or a speed cushion, they're all devices that are contemplated within that resolution. To the second part of that question is, the commission cannot unilaterally approve the installation of a design that does not meet our warrants. They can refer the matter to city council for consideration, just as if there's some, if one of the commissioners believes there's some ambiguity in the language of the resolution, that could be something that could be, addressed to city council as well.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Email, other questions that you might have?
No, I just want to point out the ambiguity that I perceive to be in this resolution, and the fact that it's Mr. Mashiko told us earlier this evening that the nomenclature was speed lump equals speed cushion. even if I accept that as true, that the speed lump is still spoken about in this resolution as something different than a speed hump. So it is not clear to me that this resolution applies to the speed cushions or speed lumps, however you want to phrase it, that we are speaking about tonight. So with that, you know, I'll just leave my position where it is. So.
Okay, other commissioners' questions? Do we have any? Commissioner Pletcher, well, do we have anyone besides Commissioner Pletcher with a question? Commissioner Pletcher, do you have, oh, okay, hold on a second. We're gonna go back to Commissioner Ferris, then to Commissioner Pletcher if we have no other questions. Commissioner Ferris.
Sure, yes, I share the same concerns as Vice Chair Email on this in the reading of the resolution, and there's more than just the speed hump and lump. We have called it in this hearing a speed hump, a speed lump, a speed bump, and a speed cushion, kind of all in one. And just colloquially, that may very well be the problem of do they all mean the same thing, or do they not mean the same thing as contemplated by the resolution? I do read the resolution similarly as Vice Chair Email, in which it talks specifically about criteria to determine whether a speed hump should be approved. And the exception says if the emergency response time is increased by more than 15 seconds per 1,000 linear feet, then speed lumps in lieu of speed humps shall be installed. And then later it says speed humps or speed lumps shall be installed in conformance with design guidelines. So it describes, once you go that route, this is how you should actually approve it. If we actually look at section C in the meetings, it says a meeting of the Traffic Commission or Council shall be called for this, and that an appeal process is there if staff denied the request. There's a number of things here in which it's not clear, like basically, do we have discretion? And, you know, we can, under the appeal process, it was said the lead petitioner can submit written appeal to staff for review by the Traffic Commission. Is that what we're doing? Is that an appeal? There's been an official decision by staff, or has this been a recommendation of the Traffic Commission because we just called the meeting? In either case, I think that what would be clear is—
let's give Steph a chance to answer your question,
okay,
and then we'll go on to the next. So
right.
I would go to—
Yeah, I could try to answer.
Mr. Mashiko, go ahead.
Yeah, that appeal process, I believe that's written not to appeal staff's recommendation. That is to appeal the, whatever recommendation is rendered by the Traffic Commission this evening. If they want to appeal that recommendation and go to council, this resolution gives them the opportunity to, submit a formal appeal, and I believe there's a fee involved, and then they would be heard by the city council.
That is the second part of section C, part 2. But the first part specifically says, if the eligibility criteria are not satisfied, the speed hump request shall be denied by staff in favor of alternative measures, which may be held to— the lead petitioner may submit written appeal to staff of a review by the Traffic Commission within 14 days. So that's just reading the resolution. In
I
either
understand
case,
that a little bit differently, Commissioner Ferris. I understand it where if we render a decision, any decision, the lead petitioner can file his appeal with staff. Staff's responsibility then is to get it on the council agenda. That's the way I understood it. And we're both reading the same thing and understanding two different things. I'm also basing this, which is not to influence anyone's opinion at all. I'm also basing this on precedent of almost a dozen years. It has always been read the same way. I swear to you, I would never make this up. It has always been read the same way every time we've had a speed hump or a speed hump, lump, or bump. A speed control vehicle that is stationary to the ground made out of asphalt. It has always come to us the same way, and it's always been read the same way. So at the very least, precedent may or may not guide a particular commissioner. And I'm not a big fan of precedent. I'll tell you that right up front. I believe every situation is on its own. But again, and I hate to be having staff and Mr. Womack work so hard tonight, but I would go back to them and say, the way I read it is the lead petitioner would appeal to staff if he does not like, or she does not like, the planning commission's decision, and then that appeal process goes to city council guided by staff. Is that correct or incorrect, Mr. Womack, or anybody?
I'm actually reading the resolution right now, but I'll go ahead and defer to Jim if he wants to chime in.
Yes, that's been the process, where if they disagree with whatever recommendation is rendered by the commission this evening, they can file an appeal. There's a fee involved, and then it would be reviewed by city council.
Yeah, and that's very similar to the planning commission appealing a decision of the planning commission. It's virtually identical to the same process.
Again, I don't deny that language is not in this part of the section, but it's in the second half of the section.
Right, Commissioner Ferris, I think what we have effectively done in many of these cases, including tonight, is we've brought this matter to the commission as a way to appeal the residents that are desirous of the speed hump, and that's really the first step there. And we've done that. And Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we've done that on several occasions where it doesn't meet the warrants, and typically that's the end of the discussion, absent a request to appeal to this body. But we've gone ahead based on the interest of the community to bring it forward on our own to the commission for discussion.
And that makes complete sense to me.
Yes, that is correct.
That's a discretion to say a feeless appeal of the staff's decision.
And they do it all the time, right? I mean, you guys don't ever reject it out of hand.
Completely fine. So I share those concerns for those reasons. I am completely convinced that the criterion has not been meant for a speed hump as considered for what a speed hump actually is, but a speed lump is definitely something that the fact that it's in the ordinance means it's something that's different than a speed hump. And the question then is, like, what should that be something that is considered, whether by us or by the council, to address the concerns here? The last part I have an issue with, and I brought up with, is the data collection, which comprised that at one intersection, only 15% of the traffic exceeded the 25 mile an hour zones, speed limits. And that is then used as one of the reasons why the criteria did not meet the warrants. And the special conditions there is that it's so close to an intersection, no one could reasonably expect 75% of the traffic to exceed 25 miles an hour for that location. And so for that reason, I think there's additional circumstances here in which we ought to at least be creative on how to do. If the commission does not want to go down the road of the speed cushion, I do think that the chair's motion is a reasonable next step of doing that, but I do want to voice the concerns of the commission.
Right, and I do have a question, basically a Brown Act question, and the question is this: would it not have to be agendized if the commission wanted to discuss and vote on sending a suggestion to council that they rewrite or add more specificity to their resolution? That is not on our agenda tonight. What is on our agenda tonight is this item. Mr. Womack, if we wanted to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but it is not on the agenda, but it's an item that's come up, and we can bring it up. Staff can bring it before council unilaterally without an agenda item being created for this commission to rediscuss that.
Okay, so then I would just amend my motion to stay as it is with an amendment that suggests staff works with city council and petition council or whatever that they do, appeals to council, to add specificity to the definition of the 3 speed control devices that exist today that may not have been specifically called out in the resolution that was signed by the late Mayor Glancy. Okay. I'm being a little facetious here, but we're delving into approving the Oaks Mall again tonight. We haven't gotten by one agenda item yet. So I'm going to say that we're going to, without any other commissioners' comments who haven't commented already, we're going to go ahead and call for a vote on this item. And if the vote fails, then we'll entertain a different motion. So does everyone understand the motion that was made? Yes, Vice Chair Email.
Sorry, it's getting late, but I mean, could you just restate the motion?
Sure. First of all, I agree with your motion that it is getting late. And then what we will say is this: to accept staff's recommendation, which is detailed in item number 2 of their recommendations, recommending the most viable solution is to request additional police enforcement, limit during the morning and evening commute and peak school periods, use of portable radar feedback signs, and have that supplement the enforcement activities. Because it does not call, the current traffic conditions do not call for the installation of speed humps because adopted guidelines are not met. And the amendment to my own motion was to suggest to council, or to go to council to ask for specificity in including the existing speed control uses such as hump, lump, and bump. Sounds like a children's book at this point. To go to council and ask them to amend the motion, amend the resolution, if they choose to include all of those speed control measures. With that, Mrs. Vasquez, if you would please.
Mr. Chair, can I just jump in just real quick? I have one sentence comment before we get to the vote. I like your amendment. I would go a little bit broader in my recommendation, a little bit broader in my thoughts of giving the resolution a facelift. I think it needs a little bit more than just that. And I'm
don't want to enter it. I'm not going to change my. I'm not going to change because I don't want to go down that road tonight. I really don't. I think we need to move on to other.
Let me just finish the sentence, please. Staff, please take it for what it is. I just think it needs a little bit more than just a simple definition. With that being said, I'm going to support the motion.
Okay, let's call for a vote, Mrs. Vasquez.
Commissioner Ferry.
No.
Commissioner Hyatt.
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Yes.
Vice Chair Imel.
No.
And Chair Lemmel.
Yes.
Okay, so motion carries 3-2. I'm going to go ahead and read. The Traffic Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and interested parties may attend the City Council meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic Commission shall file a written appeal and pay an appeal fee with the City Clerk Department within 14 calendar days of the decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date The appeal fee will be refunded only if the city council overturns the traffic commission's decision. An appeal form is available from the recording secretary.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vasquez, and thank you, staff, for all that input. We'll now move to item 6B, and I would ask our transportation planner, Kathy Naum, to please, the floor is yours to give your report, and there's no vote required on this. We're simply to take the report. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Chair Lemo.
Thank you. Thank you. Kathy?
Sorry about that. I was still muted. It's loading. It's taking a second. So if anyone wants to stand up and stretch while it's loading, that'd probably be a good time to do it. There we go. Well, didn't go. There we go.
All good.
Okay. Thank you. Oops. Not one too quick. Thank you, Chair Lemo. This is an information item on the 2022 citywide pavement project. Just before I begin, I want to mention that I'll address a couple of the comments that were made during the public comment period at the end of the presentation. Staff identified 3 road segments which have excess road capacity where we have an opportunity to implement potential lane reductions after the streets are resurfaced. Public outreach played a key role in whether the community agrees with the concepts to restripe the road segments. Tonight's presentation is a summary of the public feedback. For the 2022 pavement project, the 3 street segments that were identified as candidates for potential restriping are shown here on the map. Number 1 is Hillcrest Drive between Lynn Road and Moor Park Road. Number 2, Reno Road between Borchard Road and Maurice Drive. Number 3, Via Las Brisas between Borchard Road to Lynn Road. I will briefly describe each road segment and proposed restriping. The first segment is Hillcrest Drive between Lynn Road and Moor Park Road. This is a 1 1/4 mile, 6-lane road with no bike lanes. Here's the proposal where the number 3 travel lane is converted into a bike lane with a buffer zone between the vehicle lane and bike lane. The second street is Reno Road between Borchard Road and Maurice Drive. This is a 3/4 mile road segment. It's a 4-lane road with no bike lanes. The proposed striping is to convert the number 2 travel lane into a bike lane with a buffer zone between the vehicle and bike lane. The third street is Via Las Brisas between Borchard Road and Lynn Road. This is a 1 1/2 mile segment that is striped with 4 lanes and bike lanes. The public was asked to provide input on the proposal to reduce the number of travel lanes from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. The 1 travel lane is moved away from the center median and a buffer zone is created on both sides of the travel lane with a buffer lane painted between the travel lane and the bike lane. Public outreach efforts to get public input on all road restriping proposals included 8 platforms listed here. The city website included the project descriptions, a feedback form, the video recordings of the 2 public Zoom meetings for Reno and Hillcrest Drive, and city staff contact information. Residents and businesses adjacent to Hillcrest Drive and Reno Road received letters in the mail informing them of the striping proposals and the meeting. Portable message signs were installed on both Reno Road and Hillcrest Drive with information about the public meetings. Zoom meetings were held for 2 of the projects, and coincidentally, there were 28 different people at both meetings and 17 people spoke at each meeting. The 7 Dos Vientos Ranch HOA managers received both phone calls and emails asking them to share the restriping concepts with their HOA boards and provide feedback to me following the meetings. A separate meeting was not held with the Dos Vientos Ranch area based on the size of the community. Staff found it was more effective to work through the 7 HOAs. In addition, the city's outreach efforts, the TOA forum, ran a front page article and a second follow-up article on the restriping and included the city's website, and staff phone numbers to obtain more information about the restriping opportunities. Here's a pie chart that summarizes the feedback received for the Hillcrest Drive restriping. We received 331 public comments, with 69% of the comments in support of the restriping. Although the majority of the feedback supports restriping to add a bike lane and remove a travel lane, staff is in the process of seeking additional feedback from the Oaks and Jan's malls, management groups, as well as other businesses. Therefore, a recommendation for Hillcrest Drive will require additional time to develop before it's presented to the City Council in December. As of we have received 395 public comments for Reno Road. As of today, we have received an additional 30 emails and 4 phone calls. The majority of the emails and phone calls that have been received since last week, which were from residents who were not supporting the restriping. Although at this time, 63% of the public comments are in support of the restriping on Reno Road. So that 63% takes into account the new information we received in the last week. This pie chart shows the majority of the public, 64%, that provided input did not support the restriping of Via Las Brisas. The public comments focused on the fact that there is already a bike lane on Via Las Brisas. Reducing the number of travel lanes is believed to increase traffic congestion, and by restriping from 4 lanes to 2 lanes will create hazards for trucks and heavy vehicles because drivers will be forced to illegally pass to move around slow-moving vehicles. The chart does not include the feedback from the Dos Vientos Ranch HOA, which is the largest HOA in Dos Vientos, or Aldea Dos Vientos, which when combined represents 72% of the 2,273 units in Dos Vientos. Included in the agenda item is a letter from Dos Vientos Ranch East HOA stating that at the September 8th Board of Directors meeting, the board voted against reducing the number of lanes on Via Las Brisas. We received a letter from Aldea stating that they also do not support the restriping, but it was received too late to include in the agenda packet. The chart also does not include the discussions held on the Dos Vientos Ranch website next door, which the city does not have access to since it's a neighborhood discussion group. Although anecdotally, I did hear that there was a very lively discussion with little support for the restriping. Based on the public input received, staff is not recommending reducing the number of lanes, but is recommending narrowing each of the travel lanes from 12 feet to 11 feet in width and create a buffer lane between the automobile lane and the bike lane, as shown in the concept drawing. The number of lanes will remain the same, and the buffer will create an increased separation between the bicyclists and the vehicles. The recommended road restriping plans will be prepared for approval at the December 14th City Council meeting in advance of the project commencement in spring 2022. Following the City Council meeting, the final roadway striping modifications recommendations will be communicated to the Community Development Department to be incorporated into the circulation element of the general plan. So with that, the recommendation is in the staff report. And this concludes my presentation. And regarding some of the comments that were made during the public comment period, one of them was information that was shared what was found on Nextdoor. Since I don't have the ability to look at the information they were talking about that was on Nextdoor, I can't really address that comment. And then the other comment I wanted to address was the question if we did any studies, either traffic volume studies or bike studies, and the answer is no, we did not. We could actually say during the past year and a half would not been the best time to do counts for bicycle or vehicles, given the school was closed, that Newberry Park High School was closed down the street. And we've actually seen such a large increase in the number of cyclists that also might have skewed the data that there's been more cyclists out there than in normal times. So with that,
I could add also one additional response to one of the comments, which was that the design capacity of Reno Road was 18,000 vehicles per day. However, that's not correct. The current 2-lane capacity in each direction, the design capacity for that type of roadway is 36,000 vehicles per day.
Thank you.
And it's 18,000 vehicles per day if it were to be reduced to 1 lane in each direction. which is so that's 18,000 vehicles per day capacity, and the current volumes right now, the highest volume using the most conservative numbers was roughly 11,000 currently. So just wanted to clarify that item.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I'll say, do we have any questions of staff? All right, hearing none. Do we have any speakers on this item?
Oh,
we do. We have one.
Hold on, before we go to the speakers, I'm sorry. Commissioner Hyatt, do you have a, unmute yourself, and do you have a question?
So two of the emails that we got, I don't know, it was yesterday or today, said that they tried to submit some information through the link and the link didn't work. Was there a problem with the link initially when it was collecting the information when we put it out?
I'm not sure which link. I think I think what it was is that when we had changeable message signs up on the two roads, Reno and Hillcrest, that told people what the city's website was to go to sign up for the meetings, and people were able to do that. So that might have been they were struggling to try to sign up for the meetings. And yes, a couple of people beforehand, but other people worked around it. They either called staff or they figured out how to do it. Those two emails might have been that. But it's interesting. We officially were supposed to stop collecting data at the end of August, and as of today, I'm still collecting. Anyone who wants to call or email me, we just keep taking their opinions on the striping.
Other questions from commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any speakers on this item? Mrs. Vasquez, you are muted.
Thank you. We actually did have a registered speaker, but they're not in the audience right now, so no speakers.
Okay, so with no speakers, it would seem to me then that we would, make sure I have this right. We would just receive the report. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe Commissioner Ferris wants to speak, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, wait a minute. Where are you at? Commissioner Ferris, there you go. You know, I don't know what's going on, but your picture keeps shuffling all over the screen. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just have to have my mic on, and then I will always show up as the one that's on your Zoom. So
there you go.
So I guess what's the you pretty well got to it. Ultimately, the decision is to receive the report. Are we in a position to provide commentary for staff to incorporate or offer as part of whatever the recommendation is to council at this point?
That's a good question.
Yes, that is correct. That's actually the second recommendation is receive further comments. So yeah, for comments from the traffic commissioner.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is yours right now. Let's not lose it.
Perfect. I think the only thing I wanted to highlight is we did get in the report, certainly like the commentary regarding Reno was the sort of a percentage of comments that supported the proposal, phone calls, emails, online, and then we received a number of emails, which actually was a multiple of what they had previously had seen before, which seems to have countered the opinion. And those may be very well like differences of people's knowledge about what the proposals are and providing those to staff. I just want to make sure that those are incorporated with respect to the recommendation, because there is a paragraph that said, well, given the positive comments, the Reno proposal would go forward. But I do want to caution a little bit too, just on the equalizing a comment that when someone comes and provides it in a phone call or in an email versus a support or oppose in an online input tool. I don't necessarily, the online input tools are very low energy of needed to provide input, and emails take a bit, we ought to probably consider those type of comments, whether positive or negative on any proposal, because it required that energy to be able to craft it and spend the time and provide it to the city. I wouldn't want an email to be swamped by 10 online clicks and that it seemed to be discounted if we just treat them all as equal and say they're 69%, because it effectively is all the input tool, the online input tool. So just if there's a way to at least provide that, not to aggregate it in a way that it swamps it. That's my my comment.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
Can I respond though?
Absolutely.
So the way we're looking at this, staff's job is not to aggregate the comments. Like what I want to say, like right now, your comment is as valid as everyone that's come forward. And I wouldn't, no offense, elevate your comment higher than somebody who emailed me or called me. We're collecting comments from the public. And so that's prevented me from creating any bias on my part. It's so we had all these different platforms to try to get the most comprehensive, with the understanding none of it is really statistically valid. It's if somebody used their email, or if they saw the changeable message sign, or they were available to show up on tonight's meeting. So we aren't able to give anything more weight than any other weight, or that could be called into question that's not being done fairly either. So that's
yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I think the best way is the way it's been done without the total public comments, total percentage in support. If we just say, this is how many we received in phone calls and their percent, this is how many in email, this is how many in online input tools, then those receiving it can judge which ones are most important without the, oh, so when you add them all up, this is what you get. Because when you add them all up, you treat them equally, and it gives too much weight, in my opinion, to the online input tool. So that's the only comment.
Okay, we have Commissioner Hayek, then Commissioner Pletcher.
Just have a question about, well, I think first of all, it's smart to wait to get the feedback from the Oaks Mall and Jans Road, because I think there's a lot going on there. There's a lot potentially planned for that area. So I think that's a necessity. As far as Reno Road, I think it's dangerous to go down to one lane. Have we seen like potentially like if somebody tries to pass somebody on the right side, then they would be going into that bike lane. So when there is a single lane on a main thoroughfare, it worries me. And a number of the emails we received talked about emergency and evacuation concerns. A lot of comments about that they don't see bikes in large volume or at all on that street, which I mean could be argued that it's because there are no bike lanes, but and then there's some fear of spilling out into the side streets. Then as far as Las Brisas, someone made mention, and I don't know if it's true, maybe someone could clarify. So the developer of Dos Vientos paid for a light at Las Brisas and Del Prado. Is that true?
Actually, in response to that Brez and I communicate back to, that isn't any part of this project at all. This is a road pavement project that we're looking at restriping. So that isn't even something we're discussing. On the other side, the developer in Dos Santos did everything they were conditionally required to do. So that we're not even discussing that.
Yeah, many of our traffic signals across town were constructed as part of a development or by a developer as a condition of approval as part of the new neighborhood that was constructed.
Commissioner Hayek, anything else regarding this report? Commissioner Pletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep my comments short. I had the opportunity to sit in on some of the Zoom meetings done by staff, and I really did appreciate and continue to appreciate the outreach that was done on these possible restriping. You have a lot of information, and I appreciate that you kept the window open beyond that August-September threshold. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Commissioner Hayek mentioned with regard to Hillcrest. That's obviously such an important commercial road for the city. So certainly soliciting more feedback from the Oaks Mall and Jans Mall, I think, is the right path forward. but I'll just keep it to that. I really do appreciate all the outreach because it's a lot of man hours and a lot of time. So thank you very much.
And if I may, I just wanted to respond also to Commissioner Hayek on the item regarding bike lanes. Our background, a few of us right now have there's similar situations elsewhere in the city where we have a buffered bike lane or a bike lane that a vehicle could potentially try to jump over into, but we haven't seen that type of activity or illegal driving behavior in any of those locations. It hasn't been reported to us in any way, so that's been a positive. In terms of fire truck, and a few of those comments were brought up earlier, having this striped off area for bikes does allow in a case of a emergency for either fire or other vehicles that it would and then allow them to circumnavigate and get around traffic, as opposed to if there was two solid lanes of vehicles and they have no way of getting through. So it's not seen as a detriment to a fire response or emergency response.
Are there on the Reno Road side? Thank you for the clarifications. On the Reno Road, are there left turn? Are there areas on that stretch that someone would have to make a left turn? And then would that create cars waiting for the car to make a left turn, causing a car to go to the right of them into the bike lane to go around them while they're waiting to make that left turn?
There's left turn pockets that, for example, goes in shopping center is provided. So the answer is people will have to be more patient. It will slow traffic down if there's more cars out there. But where we see, I could say, I do this for a living industry. It's kind of the industry standard. People don't have road rage against cyclists. They don't do illegal movements on an ongoing basis. They just, the public will abide by the traffic.
And just to expand on Reno Road, that entire segment where there's a potential for going down to a single lane, there is a raised center median, and wherever there's a cross street, there are, as Kathy mentioned, there are left turn pockets provided there.
Pretty bold statement to say everyone follows the traffic laws. Then I'm not sure we would be here if that was the case.
Here's an example of the left turn pocket that in one instance is provided at the key intersections.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, we're going to go ahead and receive the report and move on with our agenda. We'll now go to item 6C, and this will be to hear a report, and this is an action item presented by our assistant engineer, Jorge Munoz. Jorge, Mr. Munoz, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you to all the members of the commission for the opportunity to provide you with an update on a capital project. Get my clicker here. Okay, I will be providing an update on the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Pedestrian Crossing project. Before I discuss the current state of the project, let me first begin with a brief overview. Thousand Oaks Boulevard Pedestrian Crossing project is located on Thousand Oaks Boulevard between Live Oak Street and Oakview Drive. The project sprouted from a corridor pedestrian study conducted by Terrace in 2018. The corridor pedestrian safety study was conducted on Thousand Oaks Boulevard from Conejo School Road to Skyline Drive, adjacent to the downtown area. The study found that 3 vehicle versus pedestrian and 1 vehicle versus bicycle collisions occurred within the limits of the study. In all cases, the vehicle driver failed to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. In consideration of the corridor study findings, the Thousand Oaks Boulevard pedestrian crossing project aims to improve pedestrian safety at the intersection of Oakview Drive and Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Live Oak Street and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. This is an eastbound view of the crosswalk, which is a 4-legged intersection. You can see there is a slight curve in the road that impairs visibility for motorists approaching the intersection, as well as the crosswalk distance that's required for the pedestrian to get across the street equals a long wait time for a vehicle to yield for a pedestrian. The current crossing does, however, have pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacons to the side of the road. It has in-ground pavement lights located on the crosswalk markings, as well as all the other necessary advance warnings to notify vehicles that a pedestrian is potentially crossing the intersection. Similarly, this is an eastbound view of Live Oak crosswalk, which has the same signs and markings as the Oakview intersection. This is a three-legged intersection, although on the north side, on the left on your screen, is one of the two driveways to the 24-hour fitness, which, based on the traffic volumes experienced during peak hours, has been seen to function as a four-legged intersection. So to improve pedestrian safety and increase the pedestrian crossing visibility, the recommendation provided by the Itinerary study was to eliminate the two crosswalks at Live Oak and Oakview Drive and consolidate the two crosses into one mid-block crossing. This is a concept plan of the project, which proposes a mid-block split pedestrian crossover design with curb extensions, a refuge island, and an overhead rapid rectangular flashing beacon. The location of the proposed mid-block pedestrian crossover design was chosen to, one, improve pedestrian visibility to the motorists since it's located in a section of roadway that has less curvature. Number two, it reduces the number of conflict points as compared to intersections. And three, it provides better integration with the existing driveways and minimizes right-of-way impacts. Looking closer to the mid-block crossing, an additional benefit to the proposed mid-block design is that it would allow pedestrians or cyclists to face the direction of the traffic before crossing the roadway. Also, with the phased crossing of the split pedestrian crossover design, vehicular delays as pedestrians are crossing the roadway are also reduced, since both directions of traffic do not necessarily need to yield to pedestrians for the entire width of the roadway. Illustrated here with the green arrow is a pedestrian crossing Thousand Oaks Boulevard. The vehicles represented in the blue rectangles need to only yield to the pedestrians when the pedestrian is actively in the crosswalk. And with that, here is an illustration of what the project could look like when it's completed. Highlighted here, you'll see the pedestrian refuge island. Another thing I like to point out in this rendering is the rapid rectangular flashing beacons and streetlights would be placed over directly above the crosswalks to enhance visibility to drivers and increase compliance to the control devices. Since the project does propose to remove the two existing crosswalks as mandated by section 21950.5 of the California Vehicle Code, the city has notified the public prior to the removal of the crosswalks by posting traffic commission notices at each leg of the crossings that are proposed to be removed, and this traffic commission meeting shall serve as the official forum for the public to be heard on the crosswalk removals. City staff has conducted extensive public outreach to residents and the neighboring businesses that would potentially be affected by the removal of the crosswalks and the addition of the mid-block crossing. A complete summary of the various changes that will need to be implemented by this project are provided in the staff report. Here's the current project schedule. And additionally, the recommendation is included in the staff report. And this concludes the presentations, and I will open the forum for any questions or comments related to the project. Thank you.
Okay, first we will have questions, not comments. Any questions for staff on the report? Okay, hearing no questions, then Mrs. Vasquez. Oh, wait a minute. Vice Chair, email.
Real quick. I didn't see anything in the presentation, nor did I read anything in the report. that the lanes of traffic are going to be narrowed by virtue of installing the pedestrian island on the boulevard. Is that right? So we're going to still have the same width lanes of traffic?
That is correct. The current lane widths will not be changed.
Okay, thank you.
The overall crossing distance will be shortened because of the fall bounds.
Okay. Commissioner Hyatt, questions?
In the report on the agenda, it says when you went out to the community with and the business owners in that area, the tenants, it says it was generally well received. Was there any negative commentary, or was there any comments made against it?
I can maybe offer some input on that one. Yeah, there was one-on-one meetings and discussions held with those key businesses within that one larger block, and there were some hesitation from a few of them, and some additional clarifications and meetings. And, these renderings help to try to depict what we're intending to construct, as well as having built the other 3 crosswalks on Southwest Boulevard over the last 18 to 24 months, which have been operating pretty advantageously for the community, and hasn't any negative feedback about those. So it was just more of a getting acclimated with really what we were talking about here. In the case of the 24-hour fitness, there is some returning restrictions that they're going to encounter from one of their driveways. They have 2 fully functioning driveways right now. One of them will continue to be fully functioning. The other one is going to be limited. The left turns will be limited out of it. But after more discussions with them, they were completely on board.
I think it's great. I think the boulevards are opportunity to make it a walkable area for our residents and a destination place where maybe you could park one time and go. So
I would just ask commissioners to hold their comments, because we have to see, first of all, let's just do this right now. Do we have any speakers, Mrs. Vasquez, on this item?
No individuals have requested to speak on this item, and no written statements have been submitted.
Okay, so please incorporate your questions or comments now, just following my little script. And I know that we don't want prospective speakers to hear our comments until after we're done, but that's done now. So, and I see you've got your little hand up, Commissioner Ferris. Take it away.
Sure, thanks. And I didn't have any questions, because I think that this was very well crafted. And just from in a historical perspective, there's been, I think, just a long time hesitancy of doing something in the median. For one of the things that Nader actually had brought up, which was the businesses on the boulevards having the ability to have left turns to go in either direction, do medians and things that are in the middle of it actually start to obstruct that ability. And there's always been something like every time you start going down this road, everybody kind of claws back, which is then why we have pavement in the left-hand median. I find this design actually ingenious for that, to deal with that. It sounds like that there was it creates one challenge for a driveway for 24-hour fitness, but through some consultation, they looked like they're okay with it. But I really do find that to be a really creative way of addressing that. I do think it'll address the pedestrian safety issues, and really nice to see it. So I wanted to make sure that those comments were on the record for that.
Thank you. Other questions and now comments? Vice Chair Email.
Yeah, just to tack on to what Commissioner Ferris said, I think that this is a great idea where you eliminate 2 crosswalks just for the flow of traffic, and also minimizing locations where people are in the street. So when you can eliminate 2 and build 1 and build it better than the other 2, I think that's a great idea. So my commendations to the staff.
Other questions and comments? All right. Commissioner Hyatt.
I'm just curious, and this is more for my education, is why are they staggered? I'm just curious as to why that is.
Yeah, that's a unique feature. I can maybe allow Jorge to elaborate a little bit on that design feature.
Yeah, so there's a couple benefits. One is when you have a straight run, it typically you kind of stuck it to the same situation as a regular crosswalk. So the staggering kind of does the whole splitting for you. That's one. But the other main benefit is that you're facing traffic as you're crossing. So it forces you to face the direction of traffic before you cross the second leg. So that's the added benefit there, to make sure that everyone's yielding to you, as opposed to giving this false sense of security when you push a button, you start crossing from one end. You have no idea that the vehicle on the other side of the road has noticed that you're trying to cross the street. So that's really the main benefit. The other main benefit too is all the constraints that we had on the boulevard. This split phase kind of staggered crosswalk helped with that as well.
Yeah, such as oak trees or parking, it kind of allowed us to line it up, so it all kind of worked out and minimize impact on as many driveways as we could.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions or comments, we will look for a motion for starters. And if you look at the staff recommendations, you can find them here.
Happy to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Pletcher, please.
Would make a motion to number one, receive report, receive public input, provide comments as appropriate. And number two, to recommend approval of the final design concept and request staff to seek City Council authorization to advise the project for construction bids upon Caltrans approval of final design.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none, we will, do you have a comment, Mr. Pletcher?
No, just did not push that hand down quick enough.
All right, so we will ask Mrs. Vasquez to call for a vote, please.
Okay. Commissioner Ferris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyatt,
Yes.
Commissioner Pletcher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Email,
Yes.
and Chair Lemo.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to item 6D, which is our bicycle advisory team and school safety team status report. It's an information only item. There is no report and no vote required. So does that mean you'll be making a report or not? I guess not. So we don't need to follow the rest of that. Okay, and then we have item number 7, status report of prior traffic commission recommendations. Would that be Mr. Mashiko?
Yes, that one we basically just listed some of the items that folks have looked at in the past. It was the Bridgegate Street striping proposal, were the concerns of speeding, and we said we'd take new measurements after the school year began. We did set up some machines, and so we are collecting or have collected new data. We're in the process of breaking that down and taking a look at it. If there's anything significant, we'll let you know. The public outreach plan that we talked about in July, that was presented this evening. That's the second item listed here on this prior actions. And then the third action is Wendy Drive in Charlotte Street. If any of you or any of the commissioners have driven down that section of roadway at Charlotte and Wendy, we now have an active pedestrian crossing, which with the rectangular rapid flashing lights, very similar to what you see on Thousand Oaks Boulevard at the few crossing points. We also have advanced warning beacons before you get to the crosswalk. So when the pedestrian pushes the button to cross the street, the lights at the crosswalk will begin flashing, as well as advanced beacons a couple hundred feet before the intersection to provide advanced warning that someone has activated the device and is either crossing or wishes to cross the street. So that concludes that item.
Thank you very much. Well done. We have no commission referrals from July 21st of 2021. And for our work program and commission schedules, do you have any questions of the commissioners? All right, then we will open up for traffic commission comments and discussion.
And Chair Limo, if I can just add a comment on the future agenda items.
Yes.
The issue about the speed hump resolution, we'll probably add that to the list as one of the items that the commission will be reviewing in the future, giving it a little bit of a facelift.
Thank you very much. And other commissioner comments, Vice Chair Email.
I believe that we were going to have a discussion about extension of the chair and vice chair seats through January.
Yes, I thought that too, and I apologize if my agenda was printed prematurely, but where would that go? Would that come up right now?
Yeah, that would be the appropriate discussion about that item. In order to, the goal is to fall in line with the City Council and Planning Commission annual schedule.
Yes, and we have been trying to, I mean, we used to have a different meeting time for the Traffic Commission. That got switched over, so there's consistency. And the suggestion is that we, in fact, come in line with all the other boards and commissions and City Council by extending our chairs. Is it through the January meeting? They take seat in February, is that correct?
Or at that meeting, that first meeting.
Or at the January meeting, okay. So that we can have discussion, I'll make that motion following the
well, I guess it wasn't an agendized, there's not going to be a motion, it's more of a
just to get everybody's feelings, okay. Real quickly, is there anybody opposed to that? Let's start there. All right. Is there anybody that absolutely wants to make a speech about being in favor of it? That's wonderful. Okay. Now we'll go to commissioner comments about just about anything. Does anybody want to make any comments? Okay. I just have a couple of comments. I will start off by saying that there is no joy in Mudville as we are now losing 9-2 in the 9th inning, and it is the bottom of the 9th inning. So we only have to get 7 runs to force it to an extended game, but it doesn't look good. That's number one. Number two, I want to comment on a couple of staff members. First of all, I want to thank staff for the thoroughness of the information brought before us tonight. I really appreciate it. Makes it much easier to be able to view a situation. But I want to thank, and it's a shame, it looks like Kathy is gone already. But I want to compliment Kathy and our sergeant because we had a 7:30 meeting at Sycamore Canyon this past week to take a look at what appeared to be a traffic problem, usually caused by parents, but it was a complaint from someone who lived in the condos there in Dos Vientos. And it turned out that while there didn't appear to be much of a problem whatsoever, staff working with the police and the principal there at Sycamore Canyon came up with a solution to enhance the ability for traffic to flow around that school even better. And I really appreciated staff, again, going above and beyond to get that done. So that's
Commissioner Limo, you mentioned Sergeant Patterson that he unfortunately wasn't able to join us tonight. He suffered an injury. I think there was an accident on during work on his motorcycle, and so luckily, by and large, he had some injury, I believe, but by and large, it's not a very severe critical type of injury. But
Excellent. Well, and
regardless,
he
he
was,
didn't. So yeah.
yeah, and he was there early and worked it out with Kathy, and they did a beautiful job. And I know that the school is happy, and we're happy. Don't know that we're going to make the residents happy, but it was only one resident that was complaining, and so we addressed the complaint. There was no traffic issue. I think most people realize that they're lucky to be adjacent to a school. Even if they don't care about anything else, their property values go up when they're adjacent to a school. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move for adjournment to November 17th, 2021. We do not know yet if we are going to be in the boardroom at Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor or having another virtual meeting. And I'm sure staff will keep us in tune with that and the requirements of the county. And with that, everybody have a great night. Thank you again.
Good evening.